Hey there. So I want to share, so this is just like a personal share about, I guess, a little bit about my past, because recently on my channel I shared my healing session. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. And it was really good, and like, what happened was like the removal of a bunch of things that were anchoring me into lack, like the lack matrix or the lack mentality, or the lack, just like that vibration of lack. And so with those things gone, I've felt like things just looking different. I felt things looking different. Interesting. Okay. Things have both felt different and looked different. My perspective has kind of shifted, changed, just feels better, lighter, more pleasant. And I also got inspired to a project that I started to do some work on, which is kind of cool. And so, well, first of all, I had a very nice experience tonight when I went to a winter concert for the elementary school where my granddaughter goes. My oldest granddaughter had her winter concert tonight. So, about 300 children singing. How can it not make you happy? How can you not be happy? It's like, they're so precious. They're so precious. So that was very enjoyable. And I also, got to see my kids. My oldest son, I don't get to see him as often. He's just working a lot. And so it's always lovely when I do get to see him. And I get to see the twins a lot more often than I get to see my oldest son and my daughter-in-law. So anyways, and just noticing, doing regular life things, which I enjoy doing, but like they were just even more enjoyable. Like I'm like sitting in this crowd of adults and I'm just thinking like, isn't it weird that like all of these adults are just watching these children sing their little hearts out and like nobody's like dancing to the music or anything, I was. I was just like, they're singing sweet little Christmas tunes and I'm gonna be dancing in my chair, showing them that I can feel what they're laying them down, like also just because, it's music. So yeah, no, I just had these thoughts about like how weird it is that all the adults like just don't get into the music more. Like, but anyway, it was very nice time. I liked it, very pleasant. Just pulling into the parking lot where all the vehicles were. Like there's vehicles parked everywhere. Like you can barely even find a spot to park because it's just cars all up and down the driveway, along the edges, in every spot. And just seeing that kind of turnout of parents there for their children. Upon seeing it, I had tearful release. Right? Because like my parents didn't go to things like that when I was growing up. And I don't know, something about seeing the turnout for these kids just like moved me inside, So anyways, just been like finding it a lot easier to reframe. Joe Dispenza has a book. I know I bought the book or I got it free or something on Audible, but I don't use Audible anymore, so that's why I haven't looked at the book recently. And maybe it would still be on there if I signed into my Audible account. I don't know. But anyway, it's called Break the Habit of Being You. And basically he describes how when you are going to level up or change your life or experience something new or heal or whatever, you are breaking the habit of being you, because the vibration we're living is just a reflection of what the vibration we've been in. So if you want to live something different, you got to change your vibration, right? And and now, since that healing session, it's just been easier to kind of do that, to kind of look at things and have it seem much more optimistic or free, or just being more, I don't know, it just, things feel good, and it feels like the past is easier to let go of, in some ways, very much. Like, there's a shift in me that go, in places that I recognizably, well, now it's recognizable, but in places where I was more hesitant to let go of past things, now I'm finding it very easy. I'm like, oh yeah, that has to go. That has to go. I'm not going to ruminate about that anymore. I'm not going to worry about that anymore. I'm not going to think about that anymore. You know, things that would have seeped in my mind every now and then when I would entertain them. Now they, like, it seems like they're coming up, and I'm just deciding, oh yeah, that's not needed anymore. File that in and never again, and that's okay. You know? So that's been interesting and nice and a good experience, because it feels like I'm breaking the habit of being me, you know? Not that I've been terrible, but it's just like I have more to achieve. You know, I haven't even gotten started yet. Like, this is the beginning for me. Like, I am in human design. You may or may not be familiar, but I have a 6-2 profile in human design. And when you look at the 6-2 profile in human design, what it tells you is that as a 6-2 means I have 3 stages of life, and the one that gives me success is the last stage. When I turn 50, that's when my success is supposed to begin, you know? And also the 2, that's the 6, and then the 2 gives a natural talent. And so I haven't even begun, you know, the good part. And it's like this, it's like, it feels like I see that all this was timely, you know, for me to shift out of the past and kind of shed things, it just happens to be coinciding with the time where I'm ready to step into this new leg of my journey, this new part of my life, which in some ways is really just the beginning for me, you know? I just happen to be like one of those people that you could call a late bloomer or something like that, you know? And what that entails, I guess you'll have to watch and see, right? So I don't know exactly how it would all unfold, and I only have essence feelings about where it's going, you know? Like, I have a vision, and sometimes my oracle tells me to dream even bigger than that. So anyways, I've just been finding it easier to do that, easier to dream bigger, easier to feel like, yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board with pursuing my preferences, desires, and God's will for me. And why not, you know? And if I look back, I feel like I've lived lifetimes. I really do. Like, first of all, it's very hard for me to grasp and believe that I'm 48. I don't feel 48. I have a little bit of tears when I say it, because it's like, where did the time go? I feel like 30 years just flew by, and I don't even know where I was during it, you know? And I've got plenty more years to go, because I plan on living a very long life. And so it's not that I'm worried about dying in 30 years or anything like that. Not at all. But it just seems weird that I'm this old. But also, if I look back and I actually look at some of the experiences, which I have been doing since I had that healing session, because like I said, they've been popping up, and I've been like letting go of things in a way. Like, deciding, like, is this something I can now let go of and not revisit anymore? So things from the past had been coming up. And as I look at all the things, I'm also realizing I have lived lifetimes already. Lifetimes. Segments of my life was just like a whole life, you know? And one example I could share is I have, shared on my channel about the last relationship that I was in, some, but I hadn't really shared anything much about all the other relationships I've had. And since that healing session I had, one of the things that came up for me was like this, looking at things that I enjoy, things that I want to spend more time doing while I have a body to live on earth in, and dancing is one of them. I love dancing, and I go through phases where I dance more often in my house, and then sometimes not at all for a while. And sometimes it's just a lot in my head or in my seat or, whatever like that. But like, I actually do enjoy getting on a dance floor. And I was thinking a lot about one particular man that I had a relationship with, a long-term relationship. We were living together. You could say we were playing house. And I had been thinking about him a lot in that we used to have fun dancing. And his name was John. And I got with John after my custody battle had already begun. And I say custody battle because that's what it was back then. Today I wouldn't engage in a battle. But back then, that's what it was. Anyways, so I had been thinking about John a bit because of the good times that we actually did share. And it was a nice feeling remembering that, because actually John, I think I just was remembering John for also the way I felt when I was with him, because I knew that he really loved me, and I knew he thought highly of me, and I knew he respected me, and I knew he cared about me, and I knew he could take care of me, and I knew he was a protector of me. And this was way back before I knew about healing myself, before I understood about my shadow or, my subconscious programming, or how I got programmed to behave just basically like I was treated by my mother. Like, I didn't know any of that, but when John and I were in relationship, that is what broke us up eventually. We were both really suffering from the effects of how we were brought up. And neither one of us knew about healing, other than the fact that, like, John did go through times where he quit drinking, and we did make efforts in that way. So basically, my relationship with John it began just by chance. I was out with my sister and her boyfriend, and John was one of my boyfriend's friends. And we went over to his house, and he was staying with another guy, or they were roommates or something, and we just hit it off. And then we were together. It was like we met, we liked each other. We were both a little shy about it, but then by the end of the night, because we were drinking, we were talking about it, and then we were just together. I'm not saying like we slept together that night or anything. I'm just saying, like, yeah, the next day we were together again. The next day we were together again, and then it was sleepovers started, and then we moved in together. We got our own place together, and he was pretty fresh out of a breakup at that point. So, but we were just young, and so there we were. We got started on playing house, and I think we were together about 3 years. That's kind of what I can put together with, if I think about how old kids were and stuff. But he had full custody of his daughter, and then he had another daughter who at times was with us and at times wasn't. And so I took the role of stepmother with his daughter, who I think she was 12 at the time when we got together. So, John was like a hard worker, and he made sure we had everything we needed. You know, rent got paid, cars got fixed, or we got a car when we needed it, or, anything that was broken got fixed. He was smart. He was kind. He was caring. He was generous with his skills, meaning he would help other people too. He he drank a lot. He drank a lot, and then he did go through times where he would go through a program to quit drinking and things like that. And I really appreciated that, because even back then, even though I didn't know about healing or anything yet, I still wanted to aspire to more in life. So, and one of my coping mechanisms was being controlling. So I was kind of a bitch, to be honest. I really was kind of a bitch, because I was kind of just like my mother. Like, like I was a bit entitled when I spoke. I was a bit bitchy, like it's like there's a nice way to say something, and then there's a bitchy way to say something. Or there's a kind way to say something, and there's a bitchy way to say something. And I was more on the bitchy side of the scale back then, It's too bad, right? But like, that's what it is, right? Like, I wasn't healed yet. Didn't even know about healing yet. And I was still pretty broken and in pain from losing the custody battle. And, well, actually, it was still in process then. I hadn't quite lost. But the fact that my children were in the home of their father was quite disturbing at that time. And I did experience a lot of emotional pain, turmoil from that, but also from the traumas that I was still carrying from growing up the way I did. And, interestingly, one of the things that John and I had in common was that we had both witnessed the suicide of our fathers right in front of us when we were children. What an odd thing to have in common, right? So there was just some indications where I thought, it was meant to be. Who else would I meet that could relate to me on that? Like, who has that matching wound? But anyways, what it came down to after many years, there was times of violence, because we would go to a bar maybe, and like someone would start stuff with him, and when alcohol is involved, it's just chaos sometimes. It's very dumb, immature stuff can happen when alcohol is involved in your life to that degree. So, chaos ensued, and it wasn't healthy, and it wasn't good, and I felt like I was, it was a hard breakup for me. It was a hard breakup. I didn't want it to end when it ended, but it ended. And, what are you going to do? we grew apart. It was, I think it would have been hard for anyone to like have a conversation with me, because of the way that I had been trained to communicate. It wasn't fair. It was very narcissistic and entitled and kind of bitchy and, terrible, really terrible. So, though John is a good man, and like he did all the great stuff, and also, not to mention, like, well, I'm gonna mention it, very good looking, very good sex life, and he was very muscular, and there was no shortage on attraction in that department, and we had good conversations, or sufficient conversations, and yeah, he was just a real good guy. Like, my whole family liked him very much, every family member. Whereas any other boyfriend that I can think of, that wasn't the case necessarily for everyone. But no one could deny that John was a good guy. So anyways, things ended, of course, and then time went on. And over the years, I did have an opportunity to, chat with his daughter years later. We're still in touch. We've kept in touch loosely. But I did express to her that when I realized it, that I was really sorry about the way that I was very hard on her and that I was kind of bitchy and that it wasn't right. And she was like, I actually thank you for doing that because I find myself saying some things that you said to me to my kids. So she hadn't found the ill effects the way that I had experienced. When I cleaned up my shadow around that area, I saw the detrimental effects of how I had been behaving. She wasn't in a position to see them yet, and she was actually acting them out, like she had absorbed the program too. So I don't know if maybe she reflected on it later, after I apologized, but at the time, what she was expressing to me was like she wasn't sad about it because she was actually her recollections of our time was that I was good to her. So on the one hand, I'm glad for that, but on the other hand, bittersweet, but I did apologize. And actually, over the years, I saw John a couple times too. And so on one of the occasions, I sat down at the table with him. I remember it was just us. Everyone else had kind of left. And it was at my sister's house. And so I ended up telling him like I'm sorry for being so bitchy back then, that I realized that I was such a bitch and that I wasn't very kind and I wasn't appropriate, and that I just want him to know I realized it and that he didn't deserve that. And he also was like, "No, Jewel, I don't think of you that way at all." He said, "I wouldn't trade that time with you for anything." And it felt nice. And it felt nice because here's a man who saw me in my worst shadows and still held me in his heart. So that's unconditional love, and I felt the same about him all these years. He's always, been in my heart as someone that matters to me, and him and his daughters, both. And so just interesting, that we could have such different perspectives of the experience we had together, right? But at that time, he was in a relationship with a girl, and he was kind of expressing to me he felt like she was out of his league. And I was like, "Oh no, you don't even know." I said, "You know what? You don't know you're one of the good ones because you've had girls like me treat you like shit." And he's like, "No." And he just it was like that for him. He could be emotionally disturbed on the inside and you would never know it because he just wouldn't stay in it. He would be either working or partying, or, that's what he did. And he had a good time doing it, and he made a lot of friends. John could, John touched so many people's lives, right? He would just hang with people who were suffering, who were in poverty, addicted to drugs or alcohol, or have trouble with the law, or, yeah, he was just well liked and loved by everyone. And so sometimes he would check in on Messenger over the years, with me. Not when he had a girlfriend. Whenever he had a girlfriend, he wouldn't. And that's just the nice thing about John, right? He's not like that. He wasn't a sneaky guy who would go behind your back and have a girl on the side, or, be breadcrumbing you or anything like that. He was a commitment kind of guy, and really fun and social and just really good guy, if I had been healthy and he had been healthy, and meaning we didn't have dysfunctional coping mechanisms, or unfair relating dynamics built in. If we didn't have that, ugh, would have stayed and been ongoing because, it's like, why not? We're both really great people. But that wasn't it for us because I wasn't yet on my spiritual journey. He never came into the spiritual journey. So anyways, since this healing session, like I said, I had been thinking of John a bit. And then the other day I was in the car with my son and one of the twins, and John came up into the conversation. And interestingly enough, my son, for some reason, like knew John, but knew him as my sister's friend and forgot that I was with him for all those years. So, but it was during that custody battle, so it was a tough time for my son. So maybe he's just like blocking out some of the stressful times of his life. But anyway, so that's why the conversation came up. But anyway, so then we were going into a restaurant together, but oh yeah, it was when we came out of the restaurant that I got a message from John's daughter, and she was letting me know that he had passed away the day before. So I was just, like, dang, like, it hit me, I was just like, I was first and foremost being there for her, asking her, letting her know that, I couldn't imagine how she was feeling and that I'm here if she wanted to talk or needed someone to listen. And also asked her about what happened and asked, what was going on and things like that. And apparently it was carbon monoxide poisoning. And she was having her doubts because she said, her dad's smarter than that. And I agree. But, it's like, I guess he was in a room and there was a heater in that room and yeah, he just was carbon monoxide poisoning. So let this be your reminder, get a carbon monoxide detector. I mean, I feel like I need to get one. In fact, I'm going to place an Amazon order right after this video. But maybe I'll get one for all my family members. And so anyway, such a sad thing, right? He was a year older than me, so that makes he was 49. And yeah, the world lost a good one. And so I kind of like held in my, I had some tears, and my kids got into the car after the restaurant and they're like, Mom, are you okay? And like, I let them know, but like they weren't close to John. They, that was a time in their lives where they're not really connected to at this time, so they weren't like, the other kid knew exactly, the other twin knew exactly who John was and remembered and told me some memories of it. And yeah, he knows. But anyways, yeah, my other son actually said that he remembered that I threw a boot. There was a staircase and I was at the top of the stairs and John was at the bottom. And my son said that he remembers that I threw a boot down at John. Like, that's what I was like back then, Like, I don't think I hit him or anything, but like, yeah, that's pretty crappy behavior, and that's the kind of energy I was in back then. So it's pretty obvious why the relationship didn't work out. But yeah, and then I was kind of like, whoa, to realize that was my son's memory. That's what he remembers is me throwing the boot. And I was like, oh gosh, I said, that must have made you really scared. And he's like, I didn't know what to think. I was like, okay, So anyways, I finished my day with my kids, and after, when I came home, I just let myself cry because the tears were just coming. I was a little bit surprised at how sad I felt. I also, when I got home, before I even came in the house, I just called my sister to let her know because he was her friend too. And yeah, and then I just let myself cry the tears that wanted to come out and over the sadness of it all. And I think part of it was that, even though he hadn't been in my life for like more than 10 years, I liked knowing he was there, alive on this earth as a person who loves me, that's in my corner, that, that knows him, that really knows me and accepts me and thinks I'm pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, and it was sad that for his daughters, that I cried for that, and I cried for my loss, the loss of his daughters, and just like the world's loss, and the loss for him of his life, that he doesn't get to be here anymore and do it some more. And I just let myself cry it out, and I think in a way, that grief, because it felt like, I've had to grieve the loss of John already in my life, but somehow it's a bit different when it's a death versus a breakup, even though it's kind of the same thing. But I think the letting that be the poker of the pain in me was helpful to me to let all pains out. You know what I mean? I think it was more just grief in general that I was being activated in through the trigger of knowing that John died. And there was definitely part of me that always thought that we would get to see each other again, you know? So it was sad to, just come to all the realization of it. And I'm glad that I let it cry out, because it didn't hurt quite as bad today, And I know so it's not like a regular mourning process for me, but it definitely did activate me in a lot of grief. And partly, I asked if I could get a message from him. It might seem weird, like, why would you want to talk to your ex-boyfriend that you haven't had in your life for 10 years if you can talk to God? Like, and it's like, well, because. It's because. And so yeah, like, I had a little conversation with John's soul, and I thought he would tell me about, like, his death or how he's feeling or have a message to pass on to his kids or anything like that. But no, he took the opportunity to be stepping into the role of being my protector. So I'm not surprised, because once you're on that side and you're unveiled, you can see everything. I understand why he would see that. That's what I needed most in that moment, is to be reminded, So basically what he said to me was, he said that I should visit my mom, and that I should forgive her. And I did today. I visited my mom. And also he said that I should let go of people who weren't honoring me for who I am, and that I should keep my standards high, and that I should let people know that I'm all done with them if they're not good for me, and that I shouldn't settle. I'm like, oh. Like, here I was wanting to, I thought we were going to talk about other stuff, but okay. That's what he wanted to tell me. That was the most important thing, I guess, at that time, which is just like, I think he probably knows and sees and feels me on this precipice of a different part of life, and he's just trying to encourage me that, like, keep letting go of the past, keep letting go of the things that aren't going with me, even if he's one of them. But he's my soulmate. Yeah, he's my mate on a soul level, and I had to, he died in order for me to connect with him again on that deeper level. But I wouldn't do that with everyone, like, it's not like every ex-boyfriend or whatever would be someone that I would want to have that with. But he's worth it. So yeah, that's my story about John. me and John had some time together. We kicked it. We had some fun times on the dance floor. And we had some stressful times trying to be a happily ever after family with no skills to do so. I'm like, wait a minute here, we should be able to pull this happily ever after off, right? Like, yeah, you go to work, I'll cook dinners, I'll make you lunch to go to work with, I'll make you breakfast burritos to go out the door with. I'll decorate our house so cute. We tried. Hmm. Yeah, so, you know, when I think it's interesting, right? For anyone who's been following along and listening and who may be curious about my past or what I've been through, you maybe never saw it coming that I would have told you about a relationship where I was the jerk, you know? Well, he would say he was the jerk, and I would say we both had some of it, right? Like, when you are functioning as an alcoholic, you definitely have there are definitely side effects to your relationships, you know? Like, people do suffer for it because it's annoying. It's annoying to deal with somebody who's drunk all the time. So fucking annoying. And he was not the first alcoholic that I had a relationship with, right? My very first boyfriend, the father of my children, was an alcoholic. And we're both annoying as drunk people. Drunk people are just, you know, it's sad. It's sad. I look at drunk people like, okay, you are avoiding, or like alcoholic people, I'll say, not just drunk people, but like alcoholic people, I say, you got to be brave enough to feel the thing you're avoiding feeling, you know? But like what John reminded me in our conversation, when I had this conversation with his soul, was like, he let me remember the time that I was talking to him about what I had learned to heal myself. So it was in like one of the messenger conversations years later, and he was checking in on me, and I was saying, oh, I've been doing this and learning to love myself, and I was saying it to him as if he should be doing it too, because I knew that like he could benefit from what I was sharing with him, you know? And I was excited back then to share what I was learning with anyone who I knew was suffering, because like, why the fuck would you just keep suffering when you could do this instead? You know? And he was reminding me of that, because when he reminded me of it, I immediately knew why he was reminding me, because I went, oh, I was talking to you as if you should be doing what I'm doing. I was like acting like you should be doing what I'm doing, like that I know better for you than you. And, and that's not how this thing works, this life thing, you know? People make their own choices. Some people, you know, he's like, Jewel, I, I that's how I wanted to live. That's how I lived. I partied. I spoke with a lot of people. I was very social. I was, you know, I was life of the party, and that's what I experienced here. And then he just told me, you keep going. And, you know, in that moment, I mean, yeah, like I get it. I get it. It wasn't my job to try to change his mind about how he lived so he could live longer, or so that he could be beside me, that he could, you know, live a happier, more free, lighter life. That's just my experience of healing. You know, my experience is or was that I can't bear to live that other way. I can't bear to be drinking every day. I I'm so happy that I'll never experience another hangover in my life. Like, it'll just never happen, because like, fuck that. I love that I am sober, and you know, I love it. And back then my life was such that I was miserable. I didn't like, I felt guilty when I would do drugs or drink or whatever, you know, to escape, and it wasn't solving anything, and I knew it. So to me, it was like I couldn't get numb enough to escape the pain. So like, this is dumb because all I'm doing is causing more pain for myself. That's what it was like for me. And then coming to this and cleaning it all up and living free of all those patterns that I was trying to, you know, escape from by being in the drugs and alcohol scene. I mean, it's like, of course I would want to do this. There's no question. Like, it's logical. It's just logical that of course I would free myself of the energy with alchemy instead of living the lifestyle of drinking and drugging. Like, of course. There's no, to me, it's like, who wouldn't do it, right? And that's the view that I was using to insinuate that why wouldn't he want to do it too, right? Maybe he didn't. Maybe his soul for this incarnation just wanted to experience what it was to live that hard life and really live the hard life, because of course you make yourself suffer a lot more when you're in those lower densities. That's what they are. They are, they are lack and suffering. But you learn a lot. Like next incarnation, maybe his soul has a new start to maybe that's when his soul decides, okay, now I'm going to live that way and I'm going to get out of it. See what that's like. You know? So yeah, it just like he taught me, he reminded me to just honor people for where they at, what they're doing, and that it really isn't my job, and I can take that weight off my shoulders if I want, of thinking that I have to save people in any way. We are really all responsible for ourselves. And my point of view was always like, well, I didn't know that I could do anything. I didn't know how to make it better. I wanted it so bad. And I didn't know how. And if someone would have told me how, I would have really appreciated it. It's like, well, apparently not everyone is like that. Not everyone has that drive in them like I had to get out of it. And to be honest, the drive is what made me find my way. So what I'm doing is like essentially saying, well, I wanted to get out of it real bad, so you must too. But that's not necessarily true, is it? It's not a universal truth that all humans will have this strong desire to get free of those lower densities like I did. Yeah. And then there's part of me that goes, well, if they just had a taste of what it is, then they would want to. It's like, well, probably. Yeah, probably. I don't know. Maybe not. It's not my job to know or, figure it out. But I don't mind offering a bridge. I don't mind offering a bridge. And then it's like, you decide if you want to take the bridge or not. There's a bridge. And if you don't want to take the bridge, you don't take the bridge. All I did was build the bridge. It's a beautiful rainbow bridge. And it leads to the high road. And, yeah, that's, I guess, why John and I had to separate and go our separate ways, is because he was never going to come to the high road with me. I'm not saying he lacked morals or integrity, but he did lack some self-love at times. I think he would probably admit that. Yeah. Yeah, so I had that. That was one of the lives I had. Years of playing stepmom to some daughters and playing good wife to a hardworking, very attractive, masculine, but kind-hearted man. Yeah. And that's not enough sometimes, right? my programs and my trauma was just a ticking time bomb, for me. So besides John, I've had other relationships, but John's like let's see, John's like the closest one to of substance. There was another like year-long relationship with a guy who was a single guy, no kids. We never lived together. Did we live together? No, we never lived together. But we went to a lot of concerts. I also went to a lot of concerts with my first boyfriend, with my children's father. I used to go to concerts a lot, like live shows. I've been to like 40. So, I mean, those were all in my younger years, and that's a lot for me back then. So I don't know if it's a lot in the scheme of things or the average of people who go, but like, I really, really enjoyed live music, and yeah, so me and that guy used to go to a lot of live music, and we worked together. Anyway, I won't go into the story about him, but it was just another painful ending eventually. Because it's really hard to end a relationship with somebody that you work with, that you get to see every day at work. And then you get to see who he decides to date instead at work. Awkward. Anyways, only awkward because obviously I didn't want it to end when it did. But not because it didn't need to end. It's just because endings were really hard for me. Oh, so I could probably share why that is. So in the beginning of my life, if you watched the healing session video, then I shared in there that I had witnessed the death of my father, who completed suicide. And the way that happened was my mom was trying to divorce him, and she moved us out of state because he was really harassing her and us, like really harassing her and us, and even kidnapped us one time. And I'm skimming over details and leaving things out because I don't want to like cringe you out with them, but I want to just get to the point, which is that my parents broke up and then my father committed suicide. My parents broke up and then my father committed suicide. Okay, that happened. And then when I grew up and was having these relationships, whenever a relationship would end, I felt suicidal. Relationship would end, I felt suicidal. Relationship would end, I felt suicidal. And eventually I found there was a pattern of that. I was like, oh shit, I'm very afraid to break up with anyone, even if it's bad, because then I'm going to feel suicidal. But if you'll notice, that was just that pattern from my childhood that I witnessed and was imprinted upon me. So I had the energy of it in my system, and now I was living it out. Crazy, right? But when I finally figured that out, I was well into my healing process, and I was like understanding things as mirrors and things like that, and noticing patterns and blah, 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 untangling things. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense on why I was so scared to break up so many times, even when it was a bad relationship. Yeah. But I healed all that, and not a problem anymore. Thankfully. Yeah. So, I don't know, kind of a low note to end on, but I'm I'm thankful for all of my experiences that I've had. I've lived, like I said, it feels like lifetimes, and I'm glad to like just be putting it all behind me and letting go of that part of my life in order to start this new thing and this new part, which, it's just like, that's not who I am anymore, and that's not the energy I carry anymore. So I know my future won't be that. You know what I mean? Yeah. That feels really good. Kind of makes life exciting again. So, until next time.